Normandy, the sea that carried the brave. June 6, 1944, 05:45 a.m. English Channel, aboard LCVPPA 31-4. The diesel fumes mixed with salt spray and vomit, creating a smell I'd remember for the rest of my life. Our Higgins boat rode the swells like a coffin refusing to sink. 32 of us packed shoulder to shoulder in the dark belly of that steel box. The channel was angrier than they'd told us it would be. 6-foot swells that lifted us up and slammed us down, each impact driving our rifle butts into our ribs. I kept my eyes on the horizon line, painted on the inside of the ramp, trying to fight the seasickness that had already claimed half the platoon. Private Kowalski was on my left, fumbling with his rosary, the beads clicking against his M1 Garand with each wave. On my right, Sergeant Hayes checked his watch for the 20th time, though we all knew what time it was. H-hour minus 45 minutes. The 116th Regimental Combat Team, 1st Battalion, Company A. We were supposed to be the first ones through the door at Dog Green Sector, Vierville-sur-Mer. First ones to test if all that training in Devon meant anything when German MG-42s opened up. The radioman, Phillips, sat across from me, 19 years old and green as spring grass. His hands shook so bad he couldn't light his cigarette. I reached over and steadied his lighter, watching the flame dance in the wind that cut through the gaps in our landing craft. "Save it for after," I told him, though we both knew there might not be an after. He nodded and tucked the cigarette behind his ear, clutching his SCR 536 radio like it was his mother's hand. Lieutenant Anderson stood at the front, one hand on the ramp, trying to look confident despite the fact that his breakfast was somewhere in the channel behind us. He was 23, fresh out of OCS, and this was his first combat command. We'd been with him since England, watched him memorize every field manual, every map of the Normandy coast. Now, watching him sway with the boat, I wondered if any of that mattered. None of us knew what that morning would cost. 5 minutes to the beach, the coxswain shouted over the engine roar. My stomach turned to ice. 5 minutes. I pressed my hand against my breast pocket, feeling Jimmy's letter through the wet fabric. He'd made me promise 2 nights ago in Portsmouth. If he didn't make it, I'd get his letter to his girl in Baltimore. Said he couldn't trust anyone else to do it right. Jimmy was 3 boats over, probably making the same promise to someone else. The sky was starting to lighten, just enough to see the outline of other landing craft on either side of us. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all heading for the same stretch of sand. The naval bombardment had stopped 10 minutes ago, and the silence felt wrong, like the whole world was holding its breath. We could hear the engines of the other boats, the slap of waves against steel hulls, someone praying in Polish 2 boats over. I thought about the training in Devon, how I'd frozen during the live fire exercise when the machine guns opened up. Just stood there like a statue while everyone else moved forward. The sergeant had covered for me, said I'd been providing suppressing fire. But we both knew the truth. That fear was still there, coiled in my chest like a snake. What if it happened again? What if I froze while Phillips needed cover, while the whole platoon needed me to move? Hayes leaned in close, had to shout to be heard over the engine. "Remember, get off the beach fast. Don't stop for anything until you hit the shingle." Then we moved to the D1 draw. The D1 draw, a gap in the cliffs that led to Vierville. Our objective, it sounded so simple when they'd briefed us. Get off the boat, cross the beach, take the draw, link up with the armor. Nobody mentioned what would be trying to stop us. The boat lurched hard to port, and someone's rifle went clattering across the deck. We all watched it slide, nobody moving to grab it. There was something final about that sound. Metal on metal, hollow and cold. Through the gaps in the landing craft's sides, I could see the French coast now, a dark line getting larger. Somewhere up there, the German 352nd Infantry Division was waiting in their concrete positions, their MG-42s already loaded, already aimed at the waterline. My hands found their way to my rifle, checking the action for the 100th time. The M1 felt heavier than it had in training, or maybe that was just my arms shaking. Around me, the others were doing the same. Checking weapons, tightening straps, touching Lucky Charms. Kowalski kissed his rosary. Phillips threw up over the side. Someone lit a cigarette despite orders not to. The engines changed pitch, and we all knew what that meant. We were entering the approach lane. Through the spray and the dawn haze, I could make out the beach obstacles, Czech hedgehogs and Belgian gates jutting from the water like broken teeth. The engineers were supposed to have cleared lanes through them, but from what I could see, there weren't many gaps. The coxswain was going to have to thread us through. 2 minutes. 2 minutes until we found out if all those prayers meant anything. 2 minutes until Dog Green Beach. 2 minutes until some of us became memories. The morning air tasted like diesel and fear. And somewhere ahead, past the sound of our engines, I swear I could hear the ocean pulling back from the shore, gathering itself for what was coming. We all could. None of us spoke about it, but we all heard it. That sound of the world about to change. 30 seconds. The coxswain's voice cracked as he screamed it. I couldn't see the beach through the ramp, but I could hear it now. The distant popping of small arms fire, the mechanical ripping sound that could only be MG-42s. They were already working on the boats ahead of us. My mouth went dry as dust. Phillips looked at me, eyes wide behind his glasses, and I tried to give him a nod that said everything would be fine. The lie stuck in my throat. The boat scraped something underwater, a sandbar or an obstacle, and we lurched forward. Lieutenant Anderson raised his hand, about to give us the word, when the world exploded. A mortar round hit the water 20 yards to our right, sending a geyser of seawater over us. Then another. Then the metallic ping, ping, ping of bullets hitting the ramp. "Drop the ramp! Drop it now!" Anderson screamed. The coxswain hit the release. The ramp splashed down, and for one frozen second, I saw it all. 300 yards of open beach, the cliffs beyond, muzzle flashes winking from concrete bunkers like eyes of demons. The air filled with angry hornets. That's what bullets sound like when they pass close, like hornets the size of your thumb. Anderson was first off, turning back to wave us forward. His mouth opened to shout an order, and then his helmet snapped back. He dropped into the water, and the red spread out from where he fell. "Go! Go! Go!" Someone was screaming it, maybe Hayes, maybe me. Bodies pressed forward, pushing, shoving. The 2 men in front of me stepped off and immediately went down, cut to pieces by machine gun fire that swept across the ramp like an invisible scythe. The water was waist-deep, cold enough to steal your breath, and already turning pink. I jumped left, trying to get off the death trap that our landing craft had become. The weight of my pack pulled me under immediately. Salt water flooded my nose, my mouth. I pushed off the bottom, broke the surface gasping, rifle held high. Bullets slapped the water all around me. Geysers erupted left and right. Men were screaming, drowning, calling for their mothers. The boat behind us had taken a direct hit from an 88mm gun. Nothing left but burning fuel on the water and pieces of things that used to be soldiers. I couldn't think, couldn't process it. Training took over. Move, just move. Phillips was still on the ramp, frozen. The radio on his back made him a perfect target, standing there silhouetted against the gray morning. I grabbed his jacket and yanked him into the water just as a burst of MG-42 fire chewed up the spot where he'd been standing. We went under together, the weight of his radio dragging us down. For a moment, I thought we'd drown right there, 10 feet from the boat. But my feet found the bottom and I pushed us both up. Move, stay low, move. Hayes was still alive, pushing men forward, trying to create order from chaos. But there was no order. Just men stumbling through surf that grabbed at their legs, equipment dragging them down, bullets finding them anyway. Kowalski was on his knees in the shallows, his rosary wrapped around his fist, a hole in his chest you could put your hand through. He looked at me with confused eyes, like he couldn't understand why his prayers hadn't worked, and then pitched forward into the foam. The beach ahead looked impossibly far. Each wave that broke against us was red now, thick with blood. Bodies rolled in the surf, bumping against our legs as we tried to push forward. Some were still moving, trying to crawl, but the weight of their packs held them under. The machine guns never stopped, that industrial hammering, methodical like they were cutting wheat. Every fifth round was a tracer, green lines of light that looked almost beautiful until they found someone. A mortar round hit behind us, and the concussion knocked me forward. My face went under, sand and salt filling my mouth. When I came up, half the men from our boat were floating. Phillips was screaming something, but I couldn't hear him over the noise. The guns, the mortars, the planes overhead, men crying out, diesel engines, waves breaking, my own heart hammering so hard I thought it would explode. We had to get out of the water. The beach looked like a killing floor, but the water was worse. We were sitting ducks, moving in slow motion, while the Germans had all the time in the world to aim. I grabbed Phillips by his radio straps and started pulling him forward. One step, another. A bullet took my helmet off, spinning it into the waves. An inch lower, and I'd have been done. The obstacles. Get behind the obstacles. Someone had figured out that the Czech hedgehogs and wooden stakes offered at least some cover. Men were clustering behind them, trying to catch their breath, trying to think. I dragged Phillips toward the nearest one, a massive X of steel beams. We pressed against it, gasping, shaking. I looked back at our landing craft. It was drifting, empty except for the dead. The coxswain was slumped over his controls, the back of his head gone. Radio static. Phillips was trying to get his SCR 536 working, trying to call in support, to tell someone, anyone, that Company A was getting murdered. But all that came through was static, and the occasional scream from other units getting hit just as hard. The whole beach was a slaughterhouse. The naval bombardment hadn't done anything. The Germans were dug in, waiting, and we were walking into their guns. An explosion, close enough that I felt the heat. Bangalore torpedo. Someone was trying to clear the wire up ahead. Then another sound, worse than the guns, the screaming whistle of an 88 coming in. I grabbed Phillips and rolled us into the water as the 88 shell hit the beach 20 yards away, and the world turned to sand and noise. My ears rang like church bells, everything muffled, underwater. Phillips was screaming something, his mouth moving. But all I could hear was that high-pitched whine. Sand in my eyes, my mouth mixed with blood from where I'd bitten through my tongue. I spat red into the foam and tried to focus. The hedgehog we'd been hiding behind was gone, just twisted metal sticking out of a crater. How were we still alive? Didn't matter. Had to move. The machine guns had found our position, bullets sparking off the metal, kicking up sand in angry spurts. I grabbed Phillips and we crawled, bellies in the wet sand, rifles dragging. Every few seconds, another man would try to get up and run, and the MG-42s would cut him down before he made 3 steps. The beach was teaching us its rules. Stay low or die. A hand grabbed my ankle. I turned to see Private Morrison from 2nd Squad, his face white as paper, trying to drag himself forward. His left leg was gone below the knee, the stump pumping blood into the sand with each heartbeat. "Help me," he whispered. "Please." I reached for him, but Hayes appeared from nowhere, shaking his head. "He's done. Keep moving." Morrison's eyes went wide with betrayal as we crawled away. I could still feel his fingers slipping off my boot. The tide was coming in, each wave pushing us forward, drowning the wounded behind us. Men who'd been hit in the water were trying to crawl up the beach before the sea claimed them, but their waterlogged packs held them down. I saw one soldier. Couldn't have been older than 18, clawing at the sand as the waves pulled him back. He looked right at me, mouth opening and closing like a fish, and then the next wave took him under. He didn't come back up. Phillips had gone quiet, and for a terrible moment, I thought he'd been hit. But when I looked, he was just staring at something to our left. I followed his gaze and wished I hadn't. It was Lieutenant Anderson's body, rolling in the surf, his head at an impossible angle. The waves pushed him up the beach, then pulled him back, up and back, like the sea couldn't decide whether to keep him or give him back. "Phillips, Phillips, look at me." I grabbed his face, forced him to meet my eyes. "We're getting off this beach. You hear me? We're getting off this beach." He nodded, but his eyes were gone somewhere else, somewhere far from Normandy. Shell shock, I'd seen it in training films. But this was different. This was a 19-year-old kid watching his whole world turn to blood and sand in 15 minutes. A Bangalore torpedo went off up ahead, blowing a gap in the wire. Men surged toward it, and immediately the German gunners shifted fire. The gap became a funnel of death. Bodies piled up until they blocked the opening, and the men behind had to climb over their dead friends to get through. The sand was red now. Not just wet, but soaked through, squishing under our hands as we crawled. The smell hit me then. Copper and shit and diesel fuel and burned meat all mixed together. My stomach heaved, but there was nothing left to throw up. "There, the seawall." Hayes was pointing to the shingle bank, maybe 50 yards ahead. It wasn't much, just a low wall of stones. But it would give us cover from the direct fire. 50 yards. Might as well have been 50 miles. Between us and the wall was nothing but open beach, littered with the dead and dying. The Germans had every inch zeroed in, but staying here meant drowning or getting blown apart. I looked at Phillips. His radio was sparking. A bullet had gone through it at some point. Useless now. "Drop the radio," I told him. "Drop everything except your rifle and ammo." He shook his head at first. That radio was his job, his purpose. But then another mortar round hit close enough to shower us with body parts from someone who'd been trying to run, and he frantically unbuckled the straps. "On 3, Hayes said. "Spread out, zigzag. Don't stop for anything." 1. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip my rifle. That old fear from training was spreading through my chest, turning my legs to water. What if I froze? What if I couldn't move? 2. More men were clustering behind us, waiting for someone else to go first. I could hear someone praying in Latin. Someone else was crying for his mother. Phillips grabbed my sleeve, and I realized he was more afraid of being left behind than of running into the guns. 3. We ran. God, we ran like our souls were on fire. The machine guns opened up immediately, their tracers creating a net of green light. Sand kicked up all around us. Men fell to my left, my right. I zagged left, and a burst of fire ripped through the space where I'd been. Phillips was right behind me, gasping, stumbling. A mortar round hit so close, I felt the heat singe my face. Shrapnel hissed past, and the man running next to me grunted and went down. His throat opened up like a second mouth. 30 yards. 20. My lungs burned. My legs were giving out. The shingles seemed to get further away with each step. A German 88 fired, and I heard the shell coming, that distinctive whistle, and threw myself forward just as it impacted behind us. The blast wave picked me up and threw me the last 10 yards. I hit the shingle wall hard enough to knock the wind out of me, Phillips crashing into me a second later. We'd made it. Somehow we'd made it. I pressed my back against the stones, gasping, trying to make myself as small as possible. My hands were bleeding from crawling through the sand and debris. My ears were still ringing. But we were alive. We were off the killing floor. I looked back at the beach we'd just crossed. It was carpeted with bodies. Some still moving, most not. The tide was coming in faster now, the waves red as far as I could see. Men were still trying to get off the landing crafts, still walking into the same murderous fire. Hayes made it to the wall, then Corporal Brennan, then a few others I didn't recognize. That was it. Out of 32 men in our boat, maybe 8 of us had reached the shingle. Phillips was fumbling with his rifle, trying to clear sand from the action. His hands were shaking so bad he couldn't work the bolt. I reached over to help him, and that's when I noticed the blood spreading across his jacket. "Phillips, you're hit." He looked down, surprised, like he hadn't felt it. Shrapnel had torn through his side, just below the ribs. Not immediately fatal, but bad enough. "I can't," he started to say. And then his eyes rolled back and he slumped against me. I pressed my hand against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, feeling his blood warm between my fingers. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to protect him, keep him safe, just like I'd promised myself. The Germans started dropping mortars behind the shingle wall, walking them in. We couldn't stay here, but the only way forward was up. Up the bluff, into the teeth of the defenses. I looked at the other survivors pressed against the wall. We were beaten, bloodied, most of us in shock. And we still had to take the D1 draw. Still had to climb those cliffs. Hayes was trying to organize what was left of the platoon, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew we were done. Company A had ceased to exist as a fighting unit. We were just scattered men trying not to die. The radio was gone, so we couldn't call for support. The officers were dead. The plan was shot to pieces. Another mortar round hit close, showering us with stones and sand. In the distance, I could hear tanks. Ours or theirs, I couldn't tell. The sun was fully up now, revealing the full scope of the disaster. The beach looked like something from Dante's hell. And somewhere up in those concrete bunkers, the Germans were probably radioing for reinforcements, preparing for the next wave. I pressed harder on Phillips's wound and felt him breathing, shallow but steady. At least he was alive. At least I hadn't failed completely. Not yet. But looking at that bluff, at the concrete pillboxes spitting fire, at the carpet of dead Americans on the beach, I knew the worst was still coming. The morning was young, and Dog Green Sector hadn't even begun to collect its full price. The bleeding wouldn't stop. I'd torn strips from my jacket, packed them against Phillips's side, but the blood kept seeping through. His face had gone gray, lips moving in what might have been prayer or just delirium. Every few seconds, another mortar round would crash nearby, and he'd whimper like a hurt dog. I kept one hand pressed against his wound, and used the other to dig a shallow depression in the stones, trying to get us lower, trying to disappear. Hayes crawled over, his face streaked with blood from a scalp wound. "We can't stay here. They're walking the mortars in. Another 10 minutes and they'll have us zeroed." He looked at Phillips, saw the blood, and his jaw tightened. "Can he move?" "He needs a medic." "There are no medics. They're all dead or dying on the beach." Hayes pulled out a morphine syringe from his kit, jabbed it into Phillips's thigh. "That's all we can do for him. We've got to move up, find better cover." Up. He wanted us to go up, toward the guns that had just murdered most of our company. I looked at the bluff rising above us, maybe 150 feet of scrub brush and exposed paths, MG-42 nests covering every approach. It was suicide. But then I looked back at the beach, at the tide coming in, drowning the wounded, and realized staying was just a slower death. "What about the draw?" I asked. "The D1? That was our objective?" Hayes laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. "Look at it." I peered around the edge of our cover. The D1 draw, the gap in the cliffs we were supposed to push through, was a fortress. Concrete bunkers on both sides, interlocking fields of fire, barbed wire in triple rows. As I watched, a squad from another company tried to rush it. The MG-42s opened up, and they went down like wheat before a scythe. Not one of them made it 10 yards. The naval bombardment was supposed to knock those out, someone said. It was Corporal Brennan, his voice hollow with shock. "Yeah, well, the Navy hit everything except what they were aiming at." Hayes spat blood into the sand. "We're on our own." On our own? The words sat heavy in my chest. I thought about the briefings back in England, all those confident officers with their maps and timetables. "The bombardment will pulverize the defenses," they'd said. "You'll walk up that beach." Instead, we'd walked into a meat grinder, and the blade was still spinning. Phillips groaned, his eyes fluttering open. "Did we make it?" he whispered. "Yeah, buddy. We made it." The lie came easy. What else could I tell him? That we'd made it off the beach just to die against a wall. "I can't feel my legs." "That's just the morphine. You're going to be fine." Another lie. I was getting good at them. He reached up, grabbed my sleeve with surprising strength. "My mother. Tell her I wasn't scared. Tell her I did my duty. You'll tell her yourself." But he was already fading again, his grip loosening. 19 years old, probably never been further from Ohio than boot camp before this war. And now he was bleeding out on a French beach he couldn't even pronounce the name of. What the hell were we doing here? I thought about Jimmy then, about his letters still in my breast pocket. Wondered if he was even alive, if his boat had made it to the beach. 3 boats over he'd been. In this chaos, that might as well have been on the moon. The promise I'd made him seemed like it belonged to a different lifetime, back when we still thought we were heroes instead of just targets. "Movement on the bluff." Someone was pointing up. Germans moving between positions. Just shadows, really, but enough to remind us they were up there, waiting, probably wondering why we weren't attacking. Maybe they were as surprised as us that the invasion had gone so wrong. Hayes was organizing what was left of us. 8 men from our boat, maybe a dozen others who'd clustered at our section of the wall. No officers left. A few NCOs trying to remember what leadership looked like when everything went to hell. We had rifles, a few grenades, 1 bar with maybe 2 magazines left, against fortified positions with mutual support and pre-registered mortars. "Listen up," Hayes said. having to shout over the sound of gunfire and explosions. We can't take the draw, but if we stay here, we're dead. There's a fold in the cliff about 50 yards to the right. Dead space where the MGs can't reach. If we can get there, maybe we can find a way up, flank the strong points. That's 50 yards of open ground, Brennan protested. They'll cut us to pieces. They're cutting us to pieces here. Another mortar round punctuated Hayes's words, close enough to shower us with dirt. We go in groups of 3, fast and low. Smoke grenades first if you've got them. I looked down at Phillips. He was unconscious again, breathing shallow. Moving him would probably kill him. Staying would definitely kill him. No good choices, just different ways to die. I'll take Phillips, I said. Hayes shook his head. He'll slow you down. Leave him. I'm not leaving him. That's an order, Private. An order. Follow orders. That's what we were supposed to do. Follow orders, trust the plan, be good soldiers. I thought about Lieutenant Anderson, how he'd studied those maps, memorized every detail of the assault plan. He'd followed orders. He was floating in the surf now, feeding the crabs. I'm not leaving him, I repeated. Hayes stared at me for a long moment, and I thought he might shoot me himself. Then his shoulders sagged. Your funeral. You go in the third group. The first group went. 3 men, running hunched over, zigzagging. The machine guns found them 20 yards out. 2 went down immediately. The third made it another 10 yards before Sniper got him. He crawled for a bit, leaving a red trail in the sand, then stopped moving. Shit, Hayes muttered. Shit, shit, shit. The second group didn't even want to go. Hayes had to threaten them, promise them, finally shove them out from behind the wall. They made it further, 30 yards maybe, before the mortars got them. One moment they were running, the next they were just red mist and fragments. Our turn, I told Phillips, even though he couldn't hear me. I got my arms under him, tried to lift. Christ, he was heavy. The radio might be gone, but everything else, ammunition, rations, gear, it all added up. I could barely stand with him. Here. Brennan appeared at my side. I'll take his legs. Together, we lifted Phillips, started to move. Behind us, someone threw smoke grenades, and for a moment, we had concealment. We ran, stumbling, Phillips's dead weight between us. The smoke cleared too soon. I heard the MG-42 spin up, that ripping sound that meant death was coming, and then something hit Brennan. He grunted, fell, taking Phillips down with him. I dropped behind them, trying to make myself small as bullets cracked overhead. Brennan was hit in the chest, sucking wound, the kind you don't come back from. He looked at me, tried to say something, but only blood came out. Phillips was stirring, confused, reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. We were in the open, no cover, the machine gun tracking toward us. This was it. This was where I'd freeze, just like in training. I could feel it happening, my muscles locking up, my mind going blank. The fear wrapped around me like chains. Get up, I told myself. Move. Do something. But I couldn't. I was that same scared kid who'd stood there while everyone else advanced, who'd let his squad down when they needed him. The machine gun bullets were walking closer, kicking up sand in neat little fountains. 10 feet, 5. In another second, we'd be torn apart. Then I saw it. Philip's eyes wide with terror, looking at me, trusting me. This kid who'd lied about his age to enlist, who just wanted to make his mother proud, who was counting on me to keep my promise to protect him. And something inside me broke loose. Not the fear that was still there, but whatever had been holding me back. I grabbed Phillips, hauled him to his feet and ran, not away from the guns, but at an angle, toward a dead Sherman tank that had somehow made it partway up the beach before dying. Bullets sparked off the armor as we dove behind it. We'd made it. Somehow, impossibly, we'd made it. But when I looked back, the shingle wall was littered with bodies. Hayes, Brennan, most of the others who'd tried to move, all dead or dying. And the Germans were still up there, still waiting. The Sherman tank was still warm, smoke rising from where the 88 had punched through its armor. The crew was still inside. I could smell them cooking. Phillips was propped against the tracks, his breathing getting worse, rattling in his chest like broken glass. The morphine was wearing off, and he kept reaching for his side, fingers coming away red. "Water," he whispered. I gave him the last of mine, watched him struggle to swallow. Half of it ran down his chin, pink with blood. We both knew what that meant. Internal bleeding. Maybe an hour, maybe less. All that effort to get him here, and he was dying anyway. The beach behind us was chaos. More waves of troops were coming in, walking into the same killing field we had. I watched a whole platoon disappear in seconds, cut down before they even made it out of the surf. The Germans had perfect fields of fire, and they were using them. Every landing craft that opened its ramp became a funnel of death. Then I heard it. Tank engines. Real tanks this time, not burning hulks. 3 Shermans were crawling up the beach, their guns swiveling, looking for targets. One of them fired, and a German pillbox erupted in concrete dust. For a moment, just a moment, I felt hope. The lead Sherman made it maybe 50 yards before an 88 found it. The turret lifted clean off, spinning through the air like a toy. The crew that tried to bail out was cut down by machine gun fire. The other 2 tanks reversed, trying to find cover that didn't exist. One hit a mine, the explosion flipping it onto its side. The third took 2 88 rounds and started burning. The crews didn't make it out. "So much for the armor support," someone said. I turned to find Staff Sergeant Cole from Baker Company, along with maybe 6 other men. They were in bad shape, one missing an ear, another with his arm in a makeshift sling. Cole himself had shrapnel wounds across his face, one eye swollen shut. "You seen any officers?" he asked. "All dead." "Figures." Cole spat blood. "We're trying to organize something. Can't stay here, can't go back. Germans are dropping artillery behind the beach now, cutting off any retreat." "What about the Rangers?" someone asked. "They were supposed to take Pointe du Hoc, flank these positions." "Rangers are getting slaughtered, same as us." Cole pointed west. "Whole invasion's fucked. But we've got men dying on this beach, and more coming in. We've got to knock out at least one strong point, give them a chance." He pulled out a crumpled map, spread it on the sand. "There's a path here, around the side of the bluff. Intel says it's mined, but it's out of the direct fire lanes. If we can get up there, get behind just one of those pillboxes." "That's suicide," one of his men said. "We've got no demolitions, no flamethrowers, no... We've got rifles and grenades. That'll have to do." Cole looked at each of us. "I'm not ordering anyone. This is volunteers only. But those are our boys getting murdered out there, our friends, our brothers. We can sit here and die slow, or we can try to do something about it." I looked at Phillips. His eyes were closed, but I could see his chest still rising and falling. If I left him, he'd die alone. If I stayed, we'd both die when the Germans finally zeroed this position. But if we could knock out even one gun, maybe the next wave would have a chance. Maybe some other 19-year-old radioman wouldn't have to bleed out on this beach. "I'll go," I heard myself say. Cole nodded. "What about him?" He gestured at Phillips. I'm not leaving him. Jesus Christ, son. He's done. You can see that, right? He's gut shot, lung shot, maybe. Even if we had a field hospital right here, he wouldn't make it. I said I'm not leaving him. Then you're not coming. I need fighters, not pallbearers. The anger hit me like a physical thing, hot and sudden. You think I haven't been fighting? You think watching my whole platoon get butchered wasn't fighting? I've been carrying this kid since the waterline, and I'll carry him up that goddamn bluff if I have to. No, you won't. Cole's voice was flat, final. You'll get us all killed trying to save someone who's already dead. That's the reality. That's the mathematics of this situation. One dying man versus maybe knocking out a gun that's killing dozens. He was right. I knew he was right. In training, they'd hammered it into us. The mission comes first, always. Don't risk the unit for one man. Don't let emotion override tactics. But training hadn't mentioned what to do when that one man was looking at you with trust in his eyes. When you'd promised to protect him, when leaving him meant breaking the last piece of yourself you had left. Philip stirred, must have heard us arguing. Go, he whispered. So quiet I almost missed it. I'm done. Go. Phillips, please. He fumbled at his pocket, pulled out a photograph. His mother probably, standing in front of a small house, smiling. Just make sure she knows. Make sure she knows I tried. Cole was already moving, his men falling in behind him. 2 other survivors from our sector joined them. They had that look in their eyes. The one that said they'd already accepted they were dead. They just wanted to make it count. 30 seconds, Cole said. You coming or not? I looked at the photograph in Phillips's hand. Thought about Jimmy's letter in my pocket. Thought about all the promises made and broken on this beach. Thought about what it meant to be a soldier versus what it meant to be human. I need 2 minutes, I said. Just 2 minutes. Cole shook his head but didn't argue. They started up the path, moving in short rushes, using what little cover there was. I watched them go, then turned back to Phillips. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. You kept your promise. You got me off the beach. He tried to smile, blood bubbling on his lips. Tell my mother. Tell her it was quick. Tell her I wasn't scared. You're the bravest man I've met today. Liar. But he was smiling now. Really smiling. Go. Go help them. Make this mean something. I took the photograph, tucked it next to Jimmy's letter. Then I took Phillips's ammunition, his grenades, everything useful. He didn't protest. We both knew what I was doing, turning him from a wounded soldier into a dying man. The transformation was subtle, but final. There's morphine in my kit, I said. Enough to, I know. I left the morphine where he could reach it, then started up the path. I didn't look back. Couldn't. But I heard him, voice carrying despite the gunfire and explosions. Hey, tell them. Tell them Phillips from Ohio was here. 20 yards up the path, I heard the shot. Single rifle report. Then nothing. I caught up with Cole's group just as they reached the minefield. 2 men were already down, one missing a leg, the other sprawled in a way that meant he'd never get up again. Cole was probing ahead with his bayonet, trying to find a safe path. The pillbox was maybe 30 yards above us, its gun still chattering, still killing. Changed your mind? Cole asked without looking at me. Phillips is dead. They're all dead. Question is whether we join them or make it worth something. A mortar round hit behind us, showering us with dirt and stones. We pressed against the cliff face, trying to become part of the rock. Above, I could hear German voices, urgent, alarmed. They'd spotted us. "Move!" Cole shouted. "Move now!" We ran through the minefield, following Cole's path, praying his bayonet had found all of them. Johnson from Baker Company stepped wrong, and the mine took him at the waist, folding him in half. We kept running. Another mine, another man gone. By the time we reached the pillbox's blind spot, there were only 4 of us left. 4 men with rifles and grenades against a fortified position. The mathematics Cole had talked about suddenly seemed very different. But below us, the beach was still a slaughterhouse. Landing craft were still coming in. Men were still dying. Cole pulled the pin on a grenade. "For what it's worth," he said, "this is the bravest and stupidest thing I've ever done." "Phillips would have liked you," I said. "On 3?" "On 3. But before we could move, we heard it. Engines. Not tanks this time. Something else. Coming up the draw, impossible as that seemed. And then, even more impossible, American voices. Shouting, advancing. The American voices were getting closer. But so were the German ones above us. They knew we were here, pressed against the cliff face like insects, and they were moving to flank us. I could hear boots on gravel, equipment rattling, barked orders in German. Cole held up his hand. "Wait." We had nowhere to go anyway. The pillbox was above, the minefield below, and 30 yards of open ground in every other direction. Then the world exploded. Not mortars this time, naval gunfire. 14-inch shells from the battleships offshore, finally finding their range. The pillbox above us took a direct hit, and the concussion knocked me flat. Concrete and steel rained down. My ears weren't ringing anymore. They'd gone past that to a complete silence, like being underwater. Cole was screaming something, pointing up, but I couldn't hear him. The dust cleared enough to see that the pillbox was cracked open like an egg. Not destroyed, but damaged. The MG-42 had gone silent. Through the smoke, I saw Germans stumbling out of the ruins, dazed, bleeding. One of them looked right at me. A kid, maybe younger than Phillips, his uniform torn, blood running from his ears. For a second, we just stared at each other. 2 boys playing soldier in hell. Then Cole shot him. The spell broke. We charged up the slope, firing at shadows in the smoke. My M1 bucked against my shoulder. 8 rounds, ping, reload. A German came around the corner of the broken pillbox, MP-40 spraying. Bullets sparked off the rocks beside me. I shot him center mass, watched him fold. Kept moving. Another German, this one trying to set up an MG-34. I shot him too. The rifle was just part of my arm now, pointing and firing without thought. We reached the pillbox entrance. Dark inside, smoke pouring out. Cole threw in 2 grenades, and we pressed against the wall as shrapnel and worse came flying out. Then we went in. The inside was a charnel house. Bodies everywhere, some still moving. The naval shell had come through the observation slit, turned everything inside to fragments. A German sergeant was trying to crawl toward a radio, leaving a red trail. Cole shot him in the head. Practical, not cruel. Just the mathematics of survival. "Clear the position," Cole shouted, though I could barely hear him through the ringing in my ears. We moved through the connected bunkers, shooting anything that moved. In one room, we found 3 Germans trying to destroy their maps and code books. We killed them all, quick and efficient, like we were back in training. Except in training, the targets didn't scream. They didn't beg. They didn't call for their mothers in a language I didn't understand. The last room held the ammunition store and 2 wounded Germans who threw down their weapons as soon as they saw us. One was an officer, older, maybe 40, with intelligent eyes that took us in and understood immediately. The other was just a kid, crying, holding his stomach where shrapnel had opened him up. "Kamerad," the officer said, hands up. "Kamerad?" Cole looked at them, and then at me. We couldn't take prisoners, couldn't spare anyone to guard them, couldn't leave them behind us. I saw him working through the same mathematics that had made him tell me to leave Phillips. "They're done," I said. "Look at them. They're not fighting anymore. They're enemy combatants in a strategic position. They're wounded men who surrendered." The German officer must have understood enough English because he slowly reached for his pocket. We all tensed, rifles coming up, but he pulled out a photograph. His family, wife, 2 daughters, all smiling in front of a small house. Just like Philip's mother, just like all of us, carrying pictures of reasons to survive. That's when the counterattack hit. Machine gun fire ripped through the entrance we'd come through. Grenades started going off. German voices, lots of them, coming from multiple directions. They'd regrouped, were taking back their position. Cole stuck his head out, almost lost it to a burst of fire. We're trapped. 4 of us, low on ammunition, in a broken pillbox with Germans coming from at least 2 directions. The mathematics had changed again. We'd knocked out 1 gun, maybe saved some lives on the beach. But now we were going to die here. I looked at the German officer. He looked back, understanding perfectly. His war was over either way. If his own men retook the position and found him surrendered, they'd shoot him. If we killed him first, same result. He said something in German to the wounded kid, who stopped crying and nodded. "Behind you," the officer said in accented English. "Tunnel. Goes to WN 70. Cole spun around, rifle aimed at his head. "It's a trap." 9. No trap. He pointed at his family photograph, then at Jimmy's letter sticking out of my pocket. "You have family. I have family. This war." He shrugged, a gesture that said everything. Another grenade went off. Closer this time. We had maybe 30 seconds before they rushed us. Cole looked at the tunnel entrance the German had indicated, a supply tunnel connecting the strong points. "If you're lying, then you die. But you die anyway if you stay." Cole made his decision. "Move!" We ran for the tunnel. Behind us, I heard the German officer shouting in German, something about Americans escaping, directing his own men away from our route, buying us time with the only currency he had left. The last thing I saw before the tunnel swallowed us was him holding that photograph, waiting for his own men to find him. The tunnel was a nightmare. Pitch black, barely tall enough to stand upright, branching in multiple directions. We had no lights, no idea where we were going, just following the main passage and hoping. Behind us, explosions and gunfire. They'd retaken the pillbox, found their wounded officer. I didn't hear any shots, but that didn't mean anything. We stumbled through the dark for what felt like hours, but was probably minutes. My hands found rough concrete, then wood, then metal. A door, locked from the other side. We could hear German voices beyond it. We were trapped between positions. "Blow it," Cole said. "They'll hear. They already know we're here. Blow it." We packed our remaining grenades against the door hinges, pressed ourselves back around a corner. The explosion in that confined space was like being inside a drum when someone hits it. The door blew inward, and we charged through, firing at shadows. The room beyond was another command post. 2 Germans at a radio, both dead before they could react. Another German coming through a doorway, MP-40 rising. I shot him, the rifle bucking, empty. No time to reload. I grabbed a German rifle from the floor, kept moving. We burst out of the bunker into daylight and into hell. The entire hillside was a battlefield. American troops were coming up from the beach in waves now. But the Germans were throwing everything at them. Mortars, machine guns, rifle fire, grenades. Bodies littered the slope. The air was thick with smoke and dust and the copper smell of blood. A group of GIs was pinned down 20 yards away, taking fire from another strong point. Without thinking, we added our fire to theirs, trying to suppress the German position. One of the GIs looked over, saw us, did a double take at our small group coming from behind enemy lines. "Who the hell are you?" he shouted. "What's left of Able Company?" Cole shouted back. "You?" "Second Rangers. We're trying to flank these bastards." Rangers. They'd made it after all, just not where they were supposed to be. Nothing was where it was supposed to be. The whole invasion had turned into a bar fight. No plan, no coordination, just small groups of men trying to stay alive and take the next piece of ground. An 88 round screamed in, hit close enough to shower us with dirt. When I looked up, half the Rangers were gone. The rest were falling back, dragging wounded. The German strong point started up again, its MG-42 sawing through Americans like they were paper. I thought about Phillips then, about his mother's photograph in my pocket, about Jimmy's letter, about all the promises made to dead men. The fear was still there, it never left. But it was joined by something else now. Rage. Pure, clean rage at the unfairness of it all. These kids, thrown against concrete and steel, dying for a few yards of French dirt. "We've got to take that gun," I said. Cole looked at me like I was insane. "With what?" "There's 2 of us left, plus maybe 5 Rangers. That's a reinforced position. Then we die trying. But that gun is murdering our people." One of the Rangers, a sergeant with a Ranger scroll on his shoulder, crawled over. "You're the crazy bastards who came from behind?" "That's us." "You know another way in?" I thought about the tunnel system, the layout we'd stumbled through. "Maybe. But it'll be defended now." "Everything's defended. Question is whether we sit here and die or do something about it." The mathematics again. Always the mathematics. How many lives for how many yards? How many dead Americans equaled 1 knocked-out gun? But the math was simpler now. We were all dead anyway. Might as well make it count. "There's a ventilation shaft," Cole said suddenly. "Saw it in the last bunker. Too small for a man, but big enough for grenades." That's insane. This whole fucking day is insane. Another burst of MG-42 fire. More Americans cut down trying to advance. On the beach below, I could see more landing craft coming in, more men walking into the meat grinder. How many more would die if we didn't do something? "I'll go," I said. "It's suicide." "Everything's suicide. At least this might work." Cole grabbed my shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything, not after what you've done today." But he was wrong. I did have to prove something. To Phillips, to myself, to every man who died on this beach, believing we were doing something that mattered. The fear was still there, would always be there, but it wasn't in charge anymore. "Give me every grenade you've got." They did. 8 grenades between all of us, plus some German stick grenades we'd picked up. I strapped them to my belt, checked the German rifle I'd grabbed, 5 rounds in the magazine. Not much, but enough. "Covering fire on my signal," I said. I crawled away before anyone could stop me, moving through the bodies and debris toward the ventilation shaft Cole had mentioned. The German gun never stopped firing. Its sound like tearing canvas, rhythmic and horrible. Each burst meant more Americans dead, more telegrams home, more Gold Star mothers. The shaft was right where Cole had said, a metal grate maybe 2 feet square. I could hear voices echoing up from below, smell cigarette smoke and cordite. They had no idea I was above them. I pulled the grate free, trying to be quiet, but it scraped against concrete. The voices below stopped. Now or never. I pulled pins on 4 grenades, dropped them down the shaft, then rolled away as the explosions came muffled through the earth, 4 distinct crumps that shook dust from the cliff face. Then screaming from inside the bunker, high and terrible. Then smoke pouring from the shaft, black and oily, stinking of burned flesh and cordite. The MG-42 went silent. For the first time in hours, that particular instrument of death stopped its song. I lay there on my back, staring at the sky, watching smoke drift across it like dirty clouds. My ears were beyond ringing now. They'd given up entirely, leaving me in a world of almost perfect silence. I could see Cole and the Rangers charging the bunker entrance, their mouths open in what must have been war cries. But to me they looked like mimes performing some violent pantomime. Muzzle flashes but no sound. Men falling but no screams. They disappeared into the smoke, and I was alone with the dead. So many dead. They lay all around me, Americans and Germans mixed together, united in their stillness. A German machine gunner slumped over his weapon, 3 bullet holes in his back. An American Ranger curled up like he was sleeping, except for the dark stain spreading beneath him. They'd all been trying to kill each other minutes ago. Now they were just meat cooling in the Norman sun. I should have gotten up, should have joined the assault, but I couldn't move. My body had finally said enough. Every muscle had gone liquid, every bone felt broken. I lay there among the corpses and thought about how easy it would be to just close my eyes and join them. No more fear, no more promises to dead men, no more mathematics of survival. But then I felt it. The letters in my breast pocket, pressing against my chest with each breath. Philip's mother's photograph, Jimmy's letter to his girl. These paper ghosts that demanded I keep going, keep breathing, keep witnessing what had happened here. The firing inside the bunker had stopped. Cole emerged, supporting a wounded Ranger, both of them covered in other men's blood. They'd taken the position. One more strong point cleared. How many to go? How many more boys would die for this stretch of bluff? I forced myself to sit up, then stand using a rifle as a crutch. The world spun, tilted, settled into something resembling focus. From this height, I could see the entire beach, and what I saw broke something inside me that would never properly heal. The tide had come in fully now, and it was red from waterline to high water mark. Bodies rolled in the surf like driftwood, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Equipment scattered everywhere, rifles, packs, helmets, pieces of men mixed with pieces of machines. Landing craft burned or sat abandoned, their ramps down like mouths frozen in screams. And still more boats were coming in, disgorging fresh troops into the same killing ground, though the fire was finally slackening as more strong points fell. This wasn't war. This was industrial slaughter. We'd fed our boys into a machine designed to turn them into corpses, and the machine had worked exactly as intended. The only thing that had stopped it was throwing so many bodies at it that we'd finally jammed the gears. "You okay?" Cole had appeared beside me, his face a mask of dirt and blood and exhaustion. "No," I said. It was the most honest thing I'd said all day. "Yeah, me neither." He pulled out a cigarette, hands shaking so bad it took 3 tries to light it. "We did it, though. We knocked out the guns." "Did we?" Look at that beach. Look at all those boys. We didn't knock out anything in time to matter. It mattered to the ones still alive. Maybe he was right. Maybe every minute we'd shortened this hell had saved someone's son, someone's husband, someone's father. But looking at that red tide, at the carpet of American dead, I couldn't feel anything resembling victory. Just a hollow emptiness where my soul used to be. What was his name? Cole asked. The kid you were trying to save? Phillips, from Ohio. He make it? No. I'm sorry. They're all sorry. Every one of them down there had a name, had people waiting for them. I pulled out the photograph of Phillips's mother, studied her smile. She had no idea yet. Somewhere in Ohio, she was probably going about her day, maybe thinking about what to cook for dinner, maybe writing him a letter he'd never read. In a few weeks, a telegram would arrive, and her world would end. You can't think about it like that, Cole said. You'll go insane. Then how do you think about it? He was quiet for a long moment, smoking, staring at the beach. I don't. I just follow orders and try not to die. That's all any of us can do. But that wasn't enough. Following orders had walked us into this meat grinder. Following orders had killed Phillips and Anderson and Hayes and Brennan and Kowalski and all the others. There had to be more to it than that. Or what was the point? A medic appeared, started checking us for wounds. I had cuts and burns I didn't remember getting, a piece of shrapnel in my shoulder I hadn't even felt. He cleaned and dressed them with mechanical efficiency, already dead-eyed from treating too many wounded, seeing too many die. You're lucky, he said, tying off a bandage. Lucky. I almost laughed. I was alive when thousands weren't, standing when my friends were feeding crabs. If that was luck, it was the cruelest kind. More Americans were coming up the bluff now, organized units moving through the strong points we'd cleared. Engineers with Bangalore torpedoes, demolition teams, fresh infantry, who still had that clean look that would be gone within hours. They moved past us like we were ghosts, and maybe we were. Maybe we died on that beach and just hadn't realized it yet. What now? I asked Cole. Now we keep going. There's a village up ahead, Vierville. Command wants it taken before nightfall. Another objective, another set of coordinates on a map that would cost God knows how many lives. The mathematics started over, the machine cranked up again, ready to grind more boys into meat. I can't, I said. You can. You have to. That's what we do. Is it? Is this what we do? Send teenagers to die for French real estate? We do what we're ordered to do. That's what makes us soldiers. I thought about Phillips again, about how he'd wanted to be a soldier, to make his mother proud. He'd done everything right, followed every order, and he'd died gut-shot and alone, while I went off to play hero. What kind of sense did that make? No, I said. Following orders makes us tools. Choosing to follow them, knowing the cost, maybe that's what makes us soldiers. Cole stubbed out his cigarette, shouldered his rifle. Philosophy later, war now. You coming? I looked back at the beach one more time. The tide was going out, leaving bodies stranded like messages written in flesh. Each one had been someone's Phillips, someone's reason to keep fighting. They deserved more than to be forgotten, more than to be just statistics in some general's after-action report. I pulled out Jimmy's letter, still unopened, still waiting to be delivered, added Phillips's mother's photograph to it. These paper promises that would follow me home if I survived, that would demand I find the words to explain the inexplicable to people who'd never understand what happened here. Yeah, I said. I'm coming. But I wasn't the same person who'd climbed into that Higgins boat this morning. That boy was dead, left somewhere between the waterline and this bluff. What walked away was something else, not a hero, not even really a soldier anymore. Just a witness to what happens when the mathematics of war are written in blood. The sun was high overhead now, burning off the morning mist, revealing the full scope of Omaha Beach in pitiless clarity. It looked like the end of the world, and for thousands of American boys, it had been. The village was ours, what was left of it. Vierville-sur-Mer had stood for centuries, survived Vikings and Normans and Napoleon. But it hadn't survived us. The church steeple was gone, knocked down by naval gunfire. Houses stood roofless and hollow-eyed, their windows blown out, their walls pocked with bullet holes. The streets were littered with rubble and the dead, German, American, and French civilians caught between. I sat on what had been someone's garden wall, watching the sun sink toward the channel, painting everything gold and red. It would have been beautiful if you could forget what the red really was. Below, on the beach, engineers were trying to clear paths through the obstacles and bodies. Bulldozers pushed sand over the dead, creating mass graves where boys from Iowa and Nebraska and Texas would rest forever in French soil they'd never wanted to see. The numbers were starting to come in, whispered between officers, passed along in fragments. 2,000 dead on Omaha alone. Maybe more. Dog Green sector had been the worst, 90% casualties in the first wave. Company A, 116th Regiment, had ceased to exist. 32 men in my boat. 4 confirmed alive. 4. I pulled out the letters again. Jimmy's was still sealed, still waiting. I'd found out an hour ago that his boat had taken a direct hit from an 88 at the waterline. No survivors. His girl in Baltimore would never get his last words, and I'd never know what they were. Some promises you just can't keep, no matter how hard you try. Phillips's mother's photograph was creased now, stained with blood, his or mine. I couldn't tell anymore. Her smile seemed accusatory in the dying light. How do you tell a mother her son died screaming in the sand, gut shut and afraid? How do you make that mean something? You can't, said a voice beside me. I looked up to find a chaplain, his collar visible beneath the mud and blood on his uniform. He'd been at this all day. I'd seen him giving last rites on the beach, praying over boys who were past hearing. Can't what? Make it mean something. Make sense of it. I've been trying all day, and God hasn't given me any answers. Then what do we tell them? The families. He sat down beside me, pulled out his own collection of letters and personal effects. Dozens of them. We tell them their boys were brave, that they did their duty, that they didn't die alone. He paused, looking at the sunset. We lie because the truth would kill them too. Phillips died alone. I left him. Did he? I left him with morphine and went to fight. That's not the same as alone. You gave him a choice. That's more than most got today. Maybe he was right. Maybe in those last moments, Phillips had felt some kind of control over his own end. Or maybe that was just another lie we told ourselves to keep functioning. The mathematics of survival included emotional equations too. I keep thinking about this morning, I said. We were so sure we were heroes. Getting on those boats, going to liberate France, save the world. Now look at us. We destroyed a village to save it. Killed everything that moved. How is that heroic? It's not, the chaplain said simply. There's nothing heroic about what happened today. Just necessary, maybe. Or maybe not even that. I don't know anymore. We sat in silence, watching the sun touch the horizon. Other soldiers were filtering into the village, finding places to rest, to collapse, to process what they'd been through. Some were laughing, that manic laughter that comes after surviving the impossible. Others just stared at nothing, already gone to wherever minds go when reality becomes unbearable. A runner found me as the last light was fading. "You're wanted at battalion." Something about a silver star. For what? The strong point action? Colonel wants to pin medals, boost morale. I almost laughed. A medal for throwing grenades down a hole, for leaving Phillips to die, for surviving when better men didn't. Tell the colonel I'm not interested. The runner looked confused, but left. The chaplain smiled slightly. They'll give it to you anyway. They need heroes for the newspapers back home. Then they should give it to the dead. They're the only heroes here. He stood to leave, then paused. What will you do with those? He nodded at the letters. I don't know. Try to find their families after the war, I guess, if I make it that far. You will. The ones who survive the first day usually make it home. It's a pattern I've noticed. Lucky us? No, he said. Not lucky, that's the worst part. You'll go home and you'll have to live with this. The dead, they're free. It's the living who carry the weight. After he left, I walked down to the beach one last time. The engineers had lit fires to work by, and in the flickering light, the beach looked like something from Dante. Bulldozers pushed sand over rows of bodies. Medics moved among the wounded, deciding who might live and who was too far gone. The tide was coming in again, dark and indifferent, washing away the blood until tomorrow's sun would reveal it all again. I found the spot where we'd landed, or thought I did. One stretch of sand looked like another now. Somewhere here, Phillips had grabbed my sleeve in the boat. Somewhere here, Anderson had died before he could give his first combat order. Somewhere here, I'd frozen for a moment that felt like forever, then found something in myself I didn't know existed. The water was cold around my boots, each wave pulling sand from under my feet, trying to drag me out to sea. I pulled out Jimmy's letter, held it for a moment, then let it go. The envelope caught the current, spun once, twice, then disappeared into the darkness. Maybe the sea would deliver it somehow. Maybe it would find its way to Baltimore on its own. Miracles had to exist somewhere, even if not here. Philip's mother's photograph I kept. Someone should remember. Someone should be able to tell her that her son was brave, even if everything else was a lie. I turned to walk back up the beach and saw them. Hundreds of small lights moving down the bluff. Reinforcements, carrying supplies, moving through the paths we'd cleared with our bodies. They looked fresh, eager even, unaware that they were walking through a graveyard. Tomorrow they'd push inland, and the day after that, and the day after that, all the way to Germany, if that's what it took. The machine would keep grinding, fed by fresh-faced boys who still believed in glory. But that was tomorrow's mathematics. Tonight, there was just the sound of waves on sand, the crackle of fires, and the weight of letters in my pocket from boys the sea had claimed. I looked back once at the dark water. Somewhere out there, beneath the waves, were pieces of landing craft and pieces of men, mixed together until you couldn't tell where the machines ended and the boys began. The English Channel had become a grave 300 miles wide, and every wave that would ever break on this beach would carry whispers from the dead. The beach was ours, but nothing on it was alive, not even us. We just didn't know it yet.